So just to go over the agenda for today, again, this is on optimizing your CV. Firstly, we'll just spend about 10 minutes recapping the AFP application process. Then we'll spend roughly about 20 minutes looking at how you're going to score points for the AFP by maximizing your CV. And then finally, we can do some question and answer sessions. Just to let you know, the moderators today are Antonia, one of the co-leaders, and Connor, who's a co-founder. So this is also just a list of our future webinars. We're, again, on the third one today, but we've got three more on the interview, the clinical station, critical appraisal station, and the personal station. And then this will be followed by the mock interviews between November and December. I personally did the Access the AFP program last year and found particularly like the mock interviews were really, really helpful in helping me to secure an AFP place. So I'd really, really recommend coming to all of the future webinars, but also doing those mock interviews. This is a guideline, well, the high level timeline for this year. The first date to be aware of is the application window closing date, which was on the 22nd of September this year. This was significantly earlier than when we did the application, which is something to be aware of for future years. It might come around quicker than you think. The next deadline to focus on, or the next dates to be aware of, are the specialised programme selection processes, which will be the shortlisting and the long listing for each of the academic units of application that they will do. The next deadline is the SJT booking window. Although you don't have to get a super exceptional mark on the SJT, you do have to pass it in order to undertake the AFP. So booking this early and getting the SJT out of the way is very important. The next deadline is the 6th of January 2022, which is the deadline to amend preferences for the specialised programmes. This will be followed by offers on the 12th of January to the 14th of January, and the cascades between the 19th of January and the 4th of February 2022. So when you're thinking about applying, that you can apply to a maximum of 2 academic units of application. There are 15 units around the UK, although there are 20 deaneries. There are 12 units in England and 1 for each of Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. It's a really personal decision that you'll need to come to after considering a number of different variables. Posts will vary so much between the different units of application in their kind of format for the academic time, what the clinical emphasis is, and that will affect your experience quite considerably. So doing some really thorough research is so important. Our website launched recently, and we've created a really helpful deanery selection guide. It's collated all of the information in one place to help you come to a decision much more easily. It'll allow you to see which deaneries have white space questions, whether they have, how many vacancies they have, the competition ratios, and it's got all of the links to the deanery websites. Sort of things to consider when you're thinking about which units of application to apply for, where you want to live, kind of the research opportunities available, the clinical jobs, the work pattern, and different people that you would like to work with. So the application process, this year the deadline was the September 22nd, is made up of 3 main parts: the EPM, your additional achievements, and the white space questions. This will all help you to get an interview and ultimately to get an offer. So today we'll be focusing on the additional achievements, which is made up of your additional degrees, your prizes, your presentations, and your publications. So what are they really looking for? Ultimately, they're looking for evidence of outstanding achievement and an interest in the field which you're planning to apply for. So that's again made up of the additional degrees, your EPM score, your presentations, your publications, and your prizes. And all of these will hopefully, in the end, ultimately secure you an interview. The weightings for each of these varies quite considerably between the academic units of application. Some units, like the Northwest, are really transparent about how they rank these components and what emphasis is put on them. Most aren't. The general rule would be the more the better. but I'd really stress that not having them or not having some of them does not exclude you from getting an AFP place. So it's really important to be tactical with where you apply and try to find out which deaneries put more emphasis on which CV components and play to your strengths. So general approach, firstly, again, stressing reading the person specifications. Most are vague, but some deaneries might list specific skills. Prioritizing your achievements. You get a maximum of 10 for each section, and you want your most impressive achievements to be your most obvious. And then finally, categorizing your achievements. Your achievements don't have to be limited to one category, as kind of a prize from a conference presentation counts as both a prize and a conference. So this is just illustrating that you get 10 spaces for each of the presentations, prizes, publications, and degrees. And Access the AFP will be a really useful resource for you. We have lots of different types. We've got these webinars, we've got the website, and the website includes lots of different guides on how to maximize each parts of your CV and the presentations, prizes, publications, and degrees. And we'll offer also the mock interviews and lots of advice on how to progress through those different stages of the interviews. It also has a section on research as a non-AFP doctor and how to boost your CV. So it's really helpful if you're thinking about getting started in research, and giving you lots of tips on how to choose a research project and how to make the most of one. So when it comes to research projects, people tend to fall into two different camps. Firstly, those who have like an interest in research, but don't really know how to get started. And secondly, people who have an interest in a specific topic. Student selected components are a really good way for both of these camps to get involved. If you don't really know where you're starting out, how to start out, this is a really good way to get involved, as most universities will have this throughout the course. And there's lots of different types of research to be involved in these. There's primary research, which involves data collection, and secondary research, which involves using existing data to conduct further research or draw comparisons between the data, such as using meta-analyses. You can have lots of different types of studies. There's observational studies, which are non-interventional, or interventional studies, which are things such as randomized control trials. Audits are a way of finding out if the current practice is the best practice and it follows guidelines and identifies areas of clinical practice that could be improved. Quality improvement projects are also a really easy way to get involved in research, and they involve planning and implementing an improvement strategy and assessing whether that improves patient outcomes or patient care, and seeing how things could be further improved following the plan, do, study, act cycle. Self-organized projects are a super way to get involved in research as well. It's actually much easier to get self-organize a project than people think. And there's loads of different ways to find projects. You can use LinkedIn, you can talk to your friends and friends of friends, you can use collaborative research groups such as Polygea. There's so much more than just contacting a supervisor over email. Intercalation is also a really good place to get started with research. It's where I did my first research project, and I'm sure many others started out in getting their interest in research. On the elective is a really good place to start research. You can do specific research electives or research whilst you're on your elective through doing a project with your supervisor or through doing an audit on the ward or a quality improvement project. You can get in touch and see what Inspire projects are going on at your universities. There are also paid internships that you can do over summer, such as the Carnegie Scholarship, the BHF and the Oxford Trials Unit all run one. And then finally, there's collaborative research networks. The website with the Research as a Non-AFP page has a really good few examples of collaborative research networks. You can also look at your university and see what Inspire projects are going on. That's a type of collaborative research. And there's also all of these different groups, including Star Surge, Eurosurge, Global Surge, the UK Clinical Research Collaboration, the Student Training and Research Collaboration. This is Remarks, it's a website, Burst, Urology Researchers, Academics, Academic Surgical Collaborative, Polygea is a global health research collaborative. the National Student Association of Medical Research, and NANSIG. These are just some of the collaborative research networks that are out there that can help you get into a research project. So when you're looking at your additional degrees, these are often quite easy for people to gain, as many have already completed a degree or partaken in intercalated. But for a lot of you, it might be a target for people to aim to see where you can intercalate. This is taken directly from the Northwest Deanery Personal Specification for this year, as it's the most clear on how they award their points. But I'd really like to stress that this isn't universal for all the deaneries, and many weight them completely differently. So it's really worth checking with each deanery that you're interested in how they weight it. The difference between a PhD and a BSc first class is very negligible when you consider the amount of time required. We would only really advise intercalating or pursuing these extra degrees if you're genuinely interested, though, and you believe your course would benefit you. I know personally many AFP candidates who didn't have an additional degree, so I'd really like to stress that it's not an essential component of the application, and you can kind of mix and match with your CV. If you've got a weaker area, you can make it up by having a stronger area in one of the other sections. So then the EPM, for those who don't know, is made up of your medical school performance, your additional degrees and publications for a maximum of 50 points. You automatically get 34 points. And for each decile that you are up the year, you gain 1 point. So your first decile would get 43 points. Then your additional degrees get a maximum of 5 points for a PhD. And then your publications, you get a maximum of 1 point each for each PubMed indexed publication. So your presentations, you get a maximum of 10 presentations in your application. These can be at a local and national or an international level. They can be through student conferences or local conferences such as trust audit meetings. The best way to get presentations is through actually getting involved in research projects, through getting involved in audits, quality improvement projects, and just getting involved as much as possible and being enthusiastic. Making it clear from the start what you'd like to get out of the project is really important, so that your supervisor can help you as much as possible and can suggest different conferences to present at. Trying to maximize every project you do is really, really important. So instead of just for your intercalation dissertation, writing it, try and get a presentation out of it, or try and get a national or international prize from doing that presentation. It's possible to get these presentations also outside of being an AFP doctor, and the website has a really good page on this. So oral presentations, this is again taken from the Northwest site, so it's not universal for every deanery. Again, to really stress that, many won't put the stress on oral presentations, would accept poster presentations as well. But you can see what the maximum number of points are scored for and the least number of points are scored for. So the most impressive type of presentation is an oral presentation on research delivered at an international level where you're the first, second, or last author. So with publications, again, the more the better, but not having any publications does not exclude you from an AFP post. Very few people will reach even close to 10 or even 1 publication after foundation training. So don't be dismayed if you haven't got any. The ways to get publications is not always through contacting a supervisor over email. Again, consider collaborative research groups and consider talking to your friends or contacting people through LinkedIn. In terms of the publications, they must be PubMed ID indexed or they won't be included. And these can be any sort of publication, from letters to the editor, to case reports, to short reports, to full scientific papers. This is again taken from the Northwest, so not universal for all the deaneries, but just stressing that it must be accepted in peer-reviewed PubMed index journal, and they should be medical in focus, with the most impressive type of publication being first, second, or last author in a full research paper with an impact factor of 6 or higher. and the least impressive being middle authorship on a research publication. One thing to note is that in the past, collaborative research publications haven't been accepted unless you've been part of the core writing team, but that might change in the future. So just worth checking the small print for the UK FPO to see whether that is changing, and hopefully it will change in the future. The important thing to note is that even though it doesn't necessarily get recognized at a foundation placement level, it will be recognized as the further you go up your career. Things like the collaborative research projects are really valued when you're looking at your core clinical training. And it's really highly prized to have experience doing that sort of collaborative research. With the prizes, again, a maximum of 10 prizes, so the more the better. There's a lot of variation between the academic units of application as to what actually constitutes a prize. Some places will only accept medical prizes, but some might accept academic achievement, leadership, or education prizes as well. The best way to get a prize is to apply for it. If you're not in the running, you're never going to get it. And being really, really proactive in trying to find different prizes. There's so many different ways you can get a prize. Prizes from conferences, from essay prizes, mini grant awards, university unit prizes, OSCE prizes. There's also worth checking the Royal Society of Medicine and the Royal College of Surgeons and individual groups such as BOTA, the Rouleau group, and Dukes for various prizes that they have going on. Again, taken from the Northwest, the point system for the different types of prizes, they will not anymore accept prizes that are awarded as merits, distinctions, or honours throughout your university or medical school degree, where they're considering the most impressive prize to be a competitive prize given for academic work completed and presented on an international basis, or a significant academic prize worth more than £100,000. So ultimately, the more the better. But again, I'd just like to stress, if there is an area of your CV that's lacking, you can make up for it in those other areas. And then finally, your CV isn't just about those for the research, your publications, prizes, presentations, and your EPM. It's about also being a well-rounded person. So getting involved in teaching, having student committees and societies on there, looking at different leadership roles and organizing conferences. Charity work, social activities, sports and hobbies are also so important when you're considering building your CV. So the best ways to maximize your CV, firstly, be honest. It's going to look really bad if you lie on your CV and people find out. They will invariably know whether you're lying or not, and it's going to have a hugely negative effect on your application if you do so. Secondly, choosing your supervisor wisely. You should really think about whether your supervisor has a good track record, like when they're known to be helpful or a high output of presentations or prizes. Because if you approach people who don't have that background, you're not completely unlikely to get them, it's just less so. And if you're wanting to do a really good research project, having someone who's got a lot of experience behind that and is going to be there to support you is really important. Ask for your supervisor's advice is a really good way to maximize your CV. Ask about which conferences you should be attending, which prizes you could be applying for. Try and get involved as much as possible. See if they've got other research projects that you could be getting involved in as well. Think ahead. Things always take a lot longer than you think, which leads me on to this next point of give yourself time. In order to make a good research project that has a really good output for presentations, prizes, and publications, you've got to give yourself time to complete that research project and really make the most of it. This screenshot is taken from the Access the AFP website on how to get involved in research as a non-AFP doctor. It's got some really good information for even people starting out at looking at getting research, and would really recommend taking a look at it. These are lots of different resources that people can be using. This is the Royal Society of Medicine. They have a huge list of prizes and essay competitions on their website. The Student Medic also has a list of essay competitions for medical students that have links to different societies that are running the different essay competitions. Finally, again, the Access the AFP has some really, really good resources for getting involved in research and building your CV. And finally, the Catch Clinical Academic Training Careers Hub has really good resources on the academic training pathways and getting involved in research in the future. So just some final tips. Don't panic if you feel like your CV is underwhelming. You can definitely make it up. And if you're not so strong in one area, you can definitely make it better in others. Your future potential is key when you're applying for the AFP. They're not necessarily looking for the best researcher in the world right now. They're looking for someone who's really enthusiastic about learning how to research and gaining some really good research skills. And enthusiasm for getting involved in research in the future is the main thing that they will want. So think ahead when you're planning on doing your research projects, making sure that you're going to choose your supervisor wisely and you're giving yourself enough time to complete a really good project that's going to be able to make a really high academic output. And then finally, you can still develop a great CV outside of the AFP program. So even if you don't get an AFP place, you can still do all of those things that you would do within the AFP. So thank you very much. We've got some time for some questions. Here's the QR code for signing up for the next session. But I think we'll do the Q&A now. Cheers.
So thanks so much for that, Maia. That was a really good sort of overlay of the components that are necessary and sort of how you can go about it. I think just to go over a couple of things. So we talked about intercalation and sort of making that project into a presentation or maybe a publication. I think rather than trying to turn put a square peg through a round hole in terms of turning your own project that you came up with and try and get that into a publication, sometimes it might be useful to approach a really good supervisor and discuss this in depth before doing your dissertation project. And that could actually end up getting you easier outputs than perhaps doing it all on your own, or picking an institution that's sort of more research focused. And again, intercalation awards are a thing, either through your university or, like, for instance, there's an RCS intercalation award that is open nationally. So these are other ways, and it's not necessarily as difficult to get as some people think, because very few people apply. So some people actually win these things by default, like essay prizes and otherwise, because there aren't enough submissions. So I'd just echo that: apply and apply and apply, and you might be surprised which one sticks.
I think that in terms of questions from basically the the sign up, we've got a question: what sort of publications should a prospective applicant prioritize? So this just says primary research, meta-analysis, and so forth. So I think for that question, it honestly doesn't matter at all what you publish at this stage. Publications are just going to give you points, so you may as well just go for it.
I'd echo that, really. I think, if you're interested in research, I'd get involved in it in any capacity. So this could just be simply an audit or a QI project that becomes a research project, or it doesn't. The level of evidence is not essential on a PubMed ID if this is what we're going for in terms of maximising points. Obviously, that's the best in terms of research, but I think really, if you're thinking about maximising points, it's just getting a PubMed ID publication, and these can be letters to the editor. It could be sometimes a conference abstract, if it's published in a registered journal, or a review of some kind. And also, the impact factor doesn't always matter. So for instance, for your EPM score, those 2 publications are not really assessed in terms of their quality. They're purely assessed in the sense of, does it have a PubMed ID or not? When it gets to the more academic foundation application, or sorry, specialised foundation application, that varies quite significantly between deaneries. And then, as you've seen that Maia sort of described, the Northwest deanery, they really break down and will actually look at your publications and see what sort of journal is this in, you know, what's the impact factor, and are you a first, second, or last author? Whereas other deaneries may not be as specific as that. But again, we don't know because we don't have access to that information. And I think really the important take-home message is to just try and do as much as you can. And don't be disheartened if you can't get publication, because getting a publication is difficult. So I think it's not essential to have, and really that could be part of what you get out of the academic programme, is getting a publication. So it's not essential, it will just help your application be more competitive.
Another question that was asked was, how does one get in contact with people who do research in medicine? How do you actively find the academics who actually want to work with medical students? I've had several projects go nowhere with supervisors who don't publish often, and a lot of people who do publish won't return my emails.
So personally, I think that's kind of a difficult one to really identify people in the first instance. I think an easy method is just by messaging everyone, and and messaging as many people as possible, and eventually one will stick, and you'll find that somebody will be sort of enthusiastic and keen. I think really what you want is a supervisor that's as enthusiastic and keen as you, that you're getting involved, because they'll be able to give you the most from that project. You can do projects with supervisors that are less involved, but it may become more difficult and you may run into issues as you have. I think really it's a numbers game, and also picking perhaps collaborative research projects is a really good option, where you can do a relatively reasonable amount of work. It's not going to overtake your life like becoming a first author on a paper, and you can still get that collaborative authorship and that PubMed ID publication. So really I think it's a numbers game. I don't know whether Maia or Antonia, you'd have any other perspective on that.
I think the only thing that I'd like to add to that is, I guess, saying that it's not gone anywhere, it's gone nowhere. I think that that's probably not true. Like, even if you're doing a project and you're just doing a poster of something, or you literally just collected the data and you never present it, like, I think any project that you do, you should probably be able to present at least in like a regional conference, so that will already give you points. And then so you should never really say that's not gone anywhere. And if you have many small projects, I think you're still able to show that you are interested and you do really want to go into research. So you don't necessarily, I guess you can't emphasize this enough, like, you don't necessarily need a publication to get into an AFP.
Yeah, so like personally for me, I had a systematic review that I did that basically wasn't published, but I managed to get presentations out of it, and I actually spoke about sort of that process of not being published and doing that work in my AFP application. So that's something that you can use to your advantage in some respects, because it's showing that you're keen to even engage with research despite encountering hurdles. And I think we will have seen in the white space questions webinars and some of the guidance, resilience is one of the key components that people look for in clinical academics. And if you can demonstrate that by engaging with a project that didn't get a publication, but you sort of persisted with it and you still want to engage in research, that's actually a good trait to demonstrate. And so it certainly wouldn't be disheartened by that.
Yeah. And I guess, sorry, Maia, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I was just going to reiterate what's already been said, that it's going to be a numbers game, but even just getting involved in some little projects, whether they don't amount to an actual output, is also a really good way for you to develop research skills. And just even going through the process of doing data collection can teach you a lot about what went wrong, whether you actually like doing primary research, whether you'd be more interested in doing a systematic review in the future. So pretty much anything is worth doing just to even develop the basic skills that you can get from being involved in a research project.
I think in terms of maybe contacting people to get projects and stuff going, I guess speak to your lecturers if they're talking about things that are really, really interesting to you. And whenever you have like a student selected module or a student selected component or anything that you can choose, maybe speak to your supervisor then, or at placement speak to your supervisor if you could get involved. And really, if you ask, a lot of clinicians have projects going on and are looking for keen medical students, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find research projects that you can get involved in. And I guess the final question really that I can see here from the pre-course, the sign up, is where is it? How do you select conferences that are guaranteed to score points, i.e. not organised by trainees or students as stated in the scoring criteria, without paying extortionate prices? So Connor, Maya.
Maya, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I think asking your supervisor who's kind of supervised you over the project and being quite upfront about that is a really good way. Also, you can apply for different grants, and a lot of the universities will have grants to allow students to attend conferences, which can also possibly count as a prize when you're thinking about your research outputs or looking at different societies, whether they have grants to apply for their specific type of conference. I know a lot of the surgical societies provide medical students grants to attend conferences, as will a lot of different societies. So it shouldn't necessarily completely restrict you from attending a conference, but asking your supervisors which conferences might be less expensive is a really good way to go about it.
Yeah, and also sometimes, you know, winning the prize at that conference can almost pay you back for the attendance. So sometimes, obviously, I know that's not going to happen for everyone, but it is definitely worth doing if you can. And as Maya was saying, there's often university grants. I think my university had up to 500 quid or something like that we could use towards conferences if we were accepted to go to them. So I think it's certainly worth a punt.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I think that's it in terms of questions. Cool. If you have any more questions, you can put it down in the Q&A bit, and then otherwise, I guess we can end our webinar. Lovely.
Shall we sort of give everyone a few minutes and then, oh, there's another question.
Let's just thank you.
Yeah, I think for those that are still in, check out our website. It's got quite a comprehensive guide that's sort of written up there, and it will have all the access to the recorded webinars, and we've got a YouTube channel as well, so you can watch this back. And if you could fill out the feedback forms, that would be really appreciated. And yeah, it really helps us sort of learn how to improve.